Well, interest rate cuts are further off than previously expected. That's because overnight the US Federal Reserve kept its cash rate on hold and said there is likely to be one rate cut this year, not three that it previously predicted. Our business editor Ross Greenwood joins us now. This plays out here in Australia as well, doesn't it?
Oh, it does so. And it goes back to really what Peter Dutton was talking about here. It's about cost of living. It's about the fact that people, if they can, should be trying to hang on to their jobs. It's about the fact that there are record numbers of, or growing record numbers of businesses going broke in this country. But in the United States, what's happened, and this is part of the reason why rates haven't come down here in Australia as well, is effectively that inflation is sticky. And the Federal Reserve is really saying there that its federal funds rate on hold at 6%. Now, it was broadly expected by this stage to be falling, but the fact of the matter is it hasn't happened. That's because the US economy has been much stronger. And so the US inflation rate came down by 0.1% during May to 3.3%. But there's all sorts of areas where that inflation is still hanging on, which shows strength in the face of all the interest rate cuts that the United States and Australia have seen. These economies have remained relatively strong in terms of spending. And also, that's largely because people have still got their jobs. But let's go to Jerome Powell, because he was asked really about the difference of opinion in his own board about where interest rates should be. Some say 2 rate cuts, some say 1. A lot of them say none. This is what he said.
We asked them to write down the most likely one, so they do. And as I think as you've said, there's 15 of the 19 are kind of clustered around 1 or 2. So I think I would look at all. I look at all of them as plausible, but I'd look at so I think that does tell you kind of what the committee thinks.
So that tells me no rate cut before November, and that is before the US election, and maybe no rate cut here either.
Yeah, well, remember, the theory was if you're Anthony Albanese or maybe Joe Biden, that by the time you hit the election, that there have been rate cuts, which provides the ultimate in cost of living relief. And so, therefore, as a result, if you could hang on to the jobs and start to get the interest rate cuts, plus here in Australia, the cost of living relief measures and tax cuts also being handed out in the second half of this year, you've pretty much got clear weather going into an election. But now, those rate cuts are probably here in Australia off until next year. In the United States, they're probably only going to be one later this year, and the Federal Reserve might even hang on there if this economy remains strong. So from that point of view, it changes the political dynamics and probably, if you like, plays into what we heard from Peter Dutton just a little bit earlier. It plays into the hands of Donald Trump more, saying that they can actually manage the economy better, but also bear in mind, post the election, whoever wins then probably gets the benefits of all of those rate cuts that will come and help the economy and take pressure off families.
Yeah, that's right. Inflation in America is coming down. That is a bright sign for us. That's what we learnt last night, didn't we?
Yeah, it is. And that's precisely it. So inflation coming down and likely to come down even further in the future. And that's because of oil prices. So if we have a quick look at oil prices, these have been coming down quite dramatically. Remember, this Brent crude was way up above $100 at one stage. So it's taking pressure off the petrol pump. And when you look at inflation, I always look at oil prices. And the suggestion is that as a result of OPEC not really cutting back significantly on the supply of oil, that there's going to be plenty of oil around the place as the world slows down over the next 6 months. And that could lead to even lower petrol prices, which therefore leads to lower inflation.
We've got jobs numbers in an hour or so, and that has been really the heroic point in our economy, that unemployment has stayed really low, relatively low.
But this is, if there is a testimony about the strength of Australia's economy, it's this.
Yeah.
It really is. And I guess, look, and you've got to point back to the government. There have been so many jobs created, and to the Reserve Bank, which is prepared to try and let inflation drift above its target band without whacking the economy, pushing it into a strong recession, effectively trying to preserve the jobs. So when we see these job numbers come out, this is the Reuters forecast from economists. They're suggesting the unemployment rate is actually going to go down in May. Now, it's a pretty close thing, but to see an unemployment rate here of 4%, and we'll find out in the next hour or so, that is pretty significant. So from that point of view, a 4% cut, or rather unemployment rate, is very good because it takes hurt away from families. And the one thing keeping many families that might have cost of living pressures upon them, but the one thing that's keeping them above water is the fact that they've got jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. That's in just over an hour, Ross. The market?
The market's one little thing that's come out. The ACCC this morning, speaking of cost of living, has expressed concern about a merger proposal between Chemist Warehouse, the biggest chemist group in Australia, and Sigma Pharmaceuticals, with Jones Amcal and the Guardian chemist chains. So it says that maybe if this merger worth $8.8 billion gets together, that could actually push up prices in the pharmaceuticals area. If we go and have a look at the markets now, the ASX 200, off the back of the US markets last night, has been strong. You can see here the Dow Jones was pretty flat, the Nasdaq up by a very strong amount. Here's our market, up by 55 points, almost 0.75%. So it's been a strong start to our markets today.
Lovely, Ross. Thank you.